I've covered shortwave number stations here a couple of times, not recently, but I have covered a few times. And I remember as a kid, the young adult with a good working shortwave radio, I could pick up the Atencion station. It used numbers in Spanish. Apparently, they had done some radio direction finding and tracked it down to an all-fair Radio Havana shortwave transmitter in Havana, Cuba. But you could pick it up very easily, pick up the numbers. I'm going to ask a few questions on what you think shortwave number stations are. Anybody that's familiar with them. Now let me get to shortwave and why people did use it. There used to be all kind of cool, you know, there used to be a lot of English language shortwave broadcasts. There's very little anymore. I think it's some religious stuff. I'll get to that in a minute too. 'Cause shortwave, that's between now the top of the AM band, 1600 kilohertz. That's the very top. That's the very bottom end of the shortwave band. Shortwave goes between 1600 kilohertz or 1.6 megahertz and 30 megahertz. Now the reason they use that it's something called the ionosphere. Oh, I just heard somebody start up the engine here. But the ionosphere, that's a part of the upper atmosphere, where anything below 30 megahertz, the signal will be bounced back to Earth, where you can pick a particular location, have a fairly powerful transmitter, and the signal will just constantly bounce back and forth from the ionosphere and just pretty much cover the whole Earth if you propagate the signal correctly. So you can pick up this signal all over the Earth above 30 megahertz. I'm getting technical for people that aren't electronics experts, but above 30 megahertz, the signal really isn't reflected back to the ground. It just goes out into space. Like like if an AM radio station, between 500 kilohertz and 1600 kilohertz, you can pick that up for some distance. They used to have those what. Let me get into these because these are relevant. What they call clear channel stations. I used to like to listen to those. They were very powerful AM broadcasts that were on a particular frequency nobody else was authorized to use. I remember a handful of these as a kid. I liked to listen to them. There were AM signals that you could pick up from all over the U.S. I think there's a couple up in Canada that would be on the what they call clear channel frequencies, where you could pick them up for hundreds or maybe thousands of miles. That was the good old days of AM and shortwave listening. Now these shortwave stations, they're still using them, and there's some theories on exactly what they're used for. The most prevalent theory is that they're used for spies. That they'll transmit numbers. Some of them are in English, some of them are in Spanish, some of them are in German. Now, if you search here on YouTube and search number stations, you'll find all the information will come up. Now, there's another theory that these are marker that they'll transmit what they call marker frequencies. Now, let's say you want to keep a channel open that you don't want anybody else to use it for anything. Now, you just broadcast their random shortwave numbers. Let's say every 6 hours or maybe 2 times a day or whatever. You'll broadcast a series of numbers on a frequency, then shut down. Now, anybody that's going to use the shortwave band will say, well, look, we don't really want to use this frequency, because somebody else is already using it. They call that like a marker frequency. Now, there's one in Russia. Now, they've disproved this. That's what they call a dead hand switch. Was it UXB or something like that? That's what they called it. It was a buzzer. Now, there was a theory that this was a transmitter just outside of Moscow. That there was a theory that this was powered from the electrical grid from Moscow, and that if this station ever went off the air, it would be a signal to their spies in the field that Moscow had been attacked. That Moscow the city of Moscow is no longer there. This was what they call a dead hand switch, and that their agents would be pretty much free to do whatever they wanted. They've disproven that. That's no longer a valid theory, but it was certainly a very scary theory, because who knows how many field agents the KGB or whatever agency was part of this might have in North America or throughout the world. Like I said, they've disproved that. Now I'm asking you now. Go here on YouTube and search for number stations, so you get a kind of idea what they are. Now, there's, the idea that some of these numbers, now they have arrested spies, known spies with, I found they did have shortwave radios. Now that, back in the day, that was pretty common because even as a kid, I liked to listen to shortwave radio. So that in itself is innocent enough. Doesn't necessarily mean anything. They may just have, or maybe they were rough, homesick for their, maybe there's a particular shortwave station that these spies liked from their homeland. Just having a shortwave radio doesn't necessarily mean anything. Like I said, back in the day, there was all kind of English language broadcast worldwide. Some very, very cool stuff back in the day. And let me get to what a QSL card is. Now, I never, a lot of times I was tempted to apply, send off for a QSL card. Now, what that is, well, that QSL is used by the radio hams, the amateurs. The QSL is like, is to you use it. They have a shortened code for different stuff. QSL is like, it's shortened for like, can you hear me? Or you respond QSL, I can hear you. And they had a 5 code, one for, one is I'm receiving you very poorly, and 5, I'm receiving you very well, like that. But QSL is, but anyway, on a QSL card, let's say you listen to a particular station. Let's say you listen to Voice of America, and, you give a particular frequency. You say, okay, I'm listening to you on 9 point something megahertz in the 35 meter band, and on a, at 0:30 UTC. You give a particular date. You say, well, I heard the news broadcast. They would talk about a particular world leader doing this or that. You give them a particular piece of information, and some of them would require. This is back before they unified a lot of the world currencies. You send them these. It was a particular type of. It was less than $1. You send them a little bit, and they would send you back his QSL card with all that information. And the one thing I found, quite interesting, I've covered this a number of times, but this lady, I was there with my dad. This is back in the 70s. This lady had a framed QSL card. It was from Sputnik. This lady had actually listened to the broadcast with Sputnik, and she had the date and the time, the date. It was Sputnik, was in Morse code. I guess they were good on Morse code. They had intercepted the message, and it was actually on this QSL card. So I found very, very interesting, very, very cool. A QSL card from Sputnik. That, if you don't know, that was that satellite that Russia had sent up in the late 1950s. The world's first satellite, the world's first artificial satellite was Sputnik back in the 50s. That was something I found very, very interesting, very, very cool. Of course, that frightened a lot of people. The fact that the Russians beat us into space. They also beat us with Yuri Gagarin, but we as the United States took off from there. We beat the Russians from then on. It kind of lulled us out of our sense of security, and history proceeded in our favor after that. But that QSL card from Sputnik was interesting. Now I'm asking my viewers, my listeners, if you listen to shortwave number stations, what do you think they are? Messages, spies, channel markers? Just various governments bored and sending out useless information just to be obnoxious? I'm asking you, what do you think on number stations? Maybe all of the above? What do you think? Okay, love you. Let's keep life interesting. Au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, ciao. Das Vestania.